Hello everyone, this is Loco S, and welcome back to DCS World for the F-5E Tiger 2. And in this video we're going over navigation in the F-5E. Most of the navigation happens down here on the F-5E's, it's sort of like the center console down below. You can kind of see also behind the stick we're going to be using a button down here. I have to put it back to what its quote-unquote normal mode is, which you'll find it in the cockpit when you start up. However, before we get down to the navigation radio, there is a very important navigational tool that all aircraft have, and it's going to be really important in the F-5E. Up here on the upper right side of the canopy bow, you have a compass, and this is going to be your backup compass. Keep them so if something happens to the systems, especially at the HSI. You're definitely going to be able to. You'll have this backup compass here to navigate to, or with. So keep that in mind. Let's go ahead and turn anti-icing for the engine or the pitot on. So trim out. There we go. So the other navigational tool in the F-5E is the HSI right here. Currently, it is displaying TACAN, and I'll explain in a bit when we get down below how to set up the TACAN, but I'll show you here on the HSI. Zoom in a little bit closer. You have a compass circle right here. Your aircraft is pointing upward, so whatever this datum line up here for the is pointing towards, that's at your current heading. So we are currently heading roughly 150 degrees. The TACAN beacon is indicated by this triangle. So the TACAN station is at heading 330 and at a distance of 40 miles. Course is something that we set. Course you can set so you can basically have it so that the course is this line here on the HSI, and it's broken up by this line here that pulls to the side to indicate what direction you should turn to in order to get on course to intersect the TACAN beacon at that heading. So you want to use the you want to set up the course to your runway heading, and then when you fly to your TACAN beacon, which is going to be basically your home airbase, you want to hit the TACAN's home airbase at the course that your runway is on. So that way you can fly for a straight in. That way you're coming in for an approach and you're already lined up with the runway. Heading is something that you can set on your own. It doesn't really affect anything up here, other than there is a little bit. There's this little square here, and this is useful for if you want to if you know from your airbase your target airway point is due south. You can put a heading bug on due south, or if you know your target area is at heading 22, you can go ahead and adjust the heading bug. It's a bit of it's a self-reference. That way you kind of know where to head to, and you can have that little heading bug for future use. Otherwise, like I said, course is used to set up a course to intercept a TACAN beacon at a certain angle and heading. So, boys are backup ADI acting a little bit weird, huh? And regardless, now we get down to the frequency. Now we get down to our setup down here. As you can see, we have the UHF set to ADF, and we are currently, let's see here, I believe, yep, currently we're using TACAN. So if you want to switch from TACAN to ADF, and we'll cover ADF now while we're up here, you want to set your nav mode to DF for direction finding, which will enable the ADF navigation up here on the radio. Now, keep in mind, with the navigation radio of the F-5E, if you use ADF, it'll take up the use of your radio that you use for communicating. So you're going to be communicating effectively. So you're effectively going to be radio silent, and you're not going to be able to communicate with anyone else in the world out in the world, either through the communication menu with AI assets or to other players on services like SRS or with an in-game radio. So do keep in mind that if you do use ADF navigation, you're going to navigate, you're going to basically knock out your only radio that you can use to communicate. Also, the radio is in megahertz, not kilohertz. So you don't want to use these beacons here that are like these circles with like the dots, a whole bunch of dots on a circle around them. You want to use these hexagons basically with squares, and because these are non-direction beacons that are in the megahertz range. You want to look for frequencies that are in the megahertz range, not the kilohertz range. So this is at Hatay Air Base. We have a frequency of 112.05 megahertz, and we program that into here. Keep in mind that in the F-5E, T essentially functions as a 1 for the purposes of setting frequency. So that is a 112.05. And Hatay Air Base is currently just north of us. And they're to the north and east of us, and there's Hatay Air Base off of our roughly about, yeah, it's not quite due north, but that's northeast of us. So Hatay Air Base is northeast of us, so we know the ADF is working. We want to go ahead now and return back to Incirlik Air Base, so we're going to go ahead, swap over to TACAN. And as I swap over to TACAN, in fact, look up here on the HSI, you will see that we get our distance measuring back. ADF, while ADF can be a bit more useful in the range of frequencies in the stations it can cover, ADF does not, however, allow you to get distance measurements. So for that, you have to use TACAN. Now, like I said, TACAN, you want to set up your TACAN to the airbase that you are wanting to land at. So we're going to go ahead and, let's see here. All right, we're on a relatively stable turn. Go ahead and F10 map. And you can see Incirlik is quite a bit of a different heading than Hatay, so we'll be able to showcase this off. So Incirlik, its nearby TACAN station is channel 21. It has a Morse code identifier of DAN, and TACAN beacons, if you didn't know, can be basically identified by triangles that have squared edges, like this. You can also go and click on the airfield menu by clicking on the little icon next to the airfield's name, and you'll get a whole list of the frequencies and relevant information for the airport. So, in Incirlik, TACAN is 21 X-ray. Now you can program that. Now, if you know you're going to be taking off and landing at the same airfield, or you know which airfield you're going to be landing at the end of your sortie, go ahead and plug that into the TACAN beacon right then and there. Just lightens the load for your handling all the stuff in the aircraft later on. Like I said, the F-5E, as you can see, there's no real autopilot, so you have to be careful with flying it, not to get too distracted by playing with things down here. So I would definitely have your TACAN preset to your home airbase frequency and navigate to that. To change frequency, you mouse over these two little knobs here and rotate them. So we can go ahead and rotate. I believe it's by default set to your middle mouse button wheel. So wheel it over to 21. Same here for the ones. Right-clicking switches it between X-ray and Y. The Y band is really only used for air-to-air TACAN navigation, which some tanker aircraft which I believe is really only limited to tanker aircraft. So you're not going to be using it really in the F-5E a whole lot, but you do have the option in the F-5E to navigate to an air-to-air tanker. You just won't be able to refuel from it because this model of F-5E doesn't have the refueling probe. See here, Incirlik Air Base is off to our starboard, and indeed, it's looking like the navigation is pointing off in that same direction, so we know that TACAN is working. Going back down here to wrap this TACAN beacon up, you have off to turn the system off. Receive only gets heading information, not range information. Transmit receive gets you range and heading information. And then you have air-to-air receive and air-to-air transmit for navigating to your airborne tanker and the like. And lastly, the only other thing I have to mention on navigation is, again, down here on the nav mode, it'll be by default on TACAN, but if you want to go to ADF, use DF. And that's it for navigation in the F-5E. I do want to point out, with navigation in the F-5E, you really want to stick to mainly using TACAN. Because because ADF knocks out your only radio, unless you can only navigate to a certain needed waypoint by radio, you definitely want to keep the radio open, if only just to communicate with other flights. Communicate with other flights, communicate with the AI, stuff like that. Otherwise, you're flying around deaf, and especially on an online server, that can be disastrous, especially when you're trying to take off and land. Also, it's kind of finicky to go through and play with the radio, like this, while you're trying to fly. As you can see, I'm not touching the joystick. I'm just playing with the radio, just trying to set it to like a frequency I'm just randomly generating in my head, and then I'm already like climbing up quite a bit, potentially losing airspeed. I'm not really keeping an eye on the actual instruments and flying. And with the F-5E, it's very much an aircraft that you want to keep your eyes on the aircraft flying it at all times. There's really there's stability assist, and you can trim out the aircraft fairly well to help you fly, so you can look away for like a brief bit of time to like mess up the systems, but you don't want to be doing it all the time. And that's it. The only other thing I can mention for navigation is, because the F-5E has no INS and no moving map or anything like that, make sure you use the F10 map and your knee boards, if provided, to memorize your route, memorize where your target area is, kind of memorize and get a mental picture of where you're flying that day, and then go out and try to use landmarks, use landmarks, use your compass, use your heading, use your TACAN, and basically kind of build yourself up a mental image of the airspace and get a rough idea where you are at all times, just in case something does happen and all of a sudden you are far out to sea, or you're far out over the desert. You at least have a rough idea where you need to start heading back to in order to pick up your TACAN frequency. Because the one thing I should mention with TACAN, and I'll probably cover this in a more dedicated general TACAN video, that's general purpose to all aircraft, TACAN beacons and ADF beacons are line of sight. So if you do not have at least some rough line of sight to the station, you will lose TACAN signal. Now, you can be sort of just behind the crest of a hill, or you can be just behind the crest of the horizon and still pick up signal, but it's going to kind of get wonky, and it's not going to be super reliable. In order to get, if you want to navigate to a TACAN beacon from a very long distance away, your best bet is to gain altitude, and just keep on gaining altitude and heading in the rough direction of that beacon until you pick it up. It's going to be one of those things where you're going to have to fly high in order to get a signal at long range for your radio frequencies. And considering if you're going to be traveling a long distance to pick up that signal, you want to fly high anyways to conserve fuel, to get back to base with enough gas to actually land. So, that being all said, this has been LockOS, signing out for your F-5E navigation tutorial. It's not a whole lot to this aircraft. It was purpose-built to be simple, and that's all there is to navigation. See you all around.